Hey, what's up everyone? This is Ill Factor from beatacademy.com. Now, I just released a single titled Weight of Everything featuring artist Katie Garfield. And in this video, I want to walk you through the mastering process, getting that song after I finished mixing it, ready to be heard by all of you around the world. So let's dive right in. Now, before I even get into the technical details of how I master my work, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about even the mindset of mastering. I know for a lot of people, it feels as if there's a fog of confusion there. And it's like, mastering is going to be the one thing that revolutionizes my music to making it sound professional. And I use this analogy a lot. I like to think of it as mixing is the process in which you are doing a lot of the dirty work. So if you're washing your car or your neighbor's koala or whatever it is, the bulk of the work, the cleaning, gets done in the mix. So you've just been off-roading and you got all the gunk, the dead insects and everything on your car. Well, you're getting the bulk of all that stuff off and getting it cleaned up in washing, right? And then when you've done all the washing, you've dried the car off, then you're giving it a wax coat to give it a nice pristine shine. And that's how I like to look at the mastering process. If you try to wax the car without washing it, no amount of wax will ever get you the results that you're looking for. So you can't have a poorly mixed record and assume that, hey, if I just run it through some mastering plugins or some mastering presets, it'll fix everything in the issue. So it's used more to enhance the work already done in the mixing process. And it shouldn't be a vigorous amount of trying to remove dirt from the mix. And what I'm saying is this is just adding that nice coat of wax on there. So with that in mind, let me go and show you how I even start my mastering process. So I start after I've mixed a record, in this case, The Weight of Everything. After I've got the mix the way I like it and it's sounding, in a good place, I will open up a new session. I won't usually try to master within that session. And then what I'll do is I'll drag the same file. I'll drag it into one session. Here's the track here. And I call that mix, unaltered, untampered with. And I duplicate that and I'll go ahead and have this one down here as the mastered version. And this is the one I actually treat. Now the purpose for this is so that I can always just go A/B back and forth. And I have a hardware controller here that I can just switch on and off these tracks. So it makes it easier to just go back and forth. I can hear what the original mix sounds like, and I can hear the current state of my mastering version. Now, one of the most important tools in the mastering process is your metering. Like, what are you using to gauge the loudness and to just check overall the volume of your master? And so I have this on my master channel. So once again, mix channel, my mastered audio, and then on the master bus here, I'm using the Dynamic Range Meter Mark II by MAAT. It's a great meter plugin. It's got all the essentials you need for gauging your loudness, and it works well. And then there's plenty of great meter plugins out there. You just kind of have to gravitate towards the one that you like using. And now, what I do want to throw in, and it's important to realize that mastering doesn't necessarily lean towards the authoritative aspect of doing this by the numbers. It's like, oh, I've my track is hitting that specific number and therefore it's perfect. No, there's going to be times where you bend the rules because you're really navigating this process through vibe and the overall feeling. And so it's just as much as a creative decision in the mastering process, if anything, more so than the, okay, that's technically right. I've got that frequency notched down. I've got this thing, it's hitting this meter. And so those things are great. They're just guidelines to guide you, but they're not the end all to everything, right? So it's not the authoritative directory of why you're doing things. It's there to kind of keep you, without going out of bounds too much. But you want to always use the creative mindset, your creative core, to drive the decisions to your mastering process. So now that I can get off my soapbox, just pointing out a couple things on this meter. I've set this in the L mode here. You can have it at RMS, meaning the average volume, instead of just the peak volume, but the overall average volume of your track. And you could usually gauge by this. But right now I'm gravitating towards the standard that, most of music is being consumed. So that's YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. So streaming is where I'm headed at. And right now, as we know, Spotify is currently placing everything in the loudness meter that they're using everything to gauge is -14. The target is -14 LUFS, or LUFS. Sorry. So that's the target. It's -14 there. So what there's good in, before that, we used to have to, people would just squash and crank everything and, make it sound like a dead giraffe falling on a branch or something. But now that I know that if I go past -14 and I'm trying to just get it as loud as possible, Spotify will back that down and will bring it back down to -14 regardless. So the good thing is I can add life and dynamics to my mastering process. I don't have to squash everything so that it just, for the sake of making it sound louder. Now I know that Spotify is going to put things at a -14. That's my target goal. So I can leave the dynamics back in there. I don't have to compromise the overall dynamics and the feel of my song for the sake of it just being loud. So that's just one thing to consider. So as I play this, enough yapping, let me play this.
Oh, my eyes are blurred, trapped inside a dream. Walking through the fire.
So it's giving me the average LUFS reading. And right now, since it's a quieter part of the song, we're at saying that the average is at -21. So we have a long way to go to hit 14. So the best way to utilize this is just give a run of the whole song from top to bottom so you can kind of get a overall gauge. And the reason why I like this meter is that it has like this recording motor to just analyze the whole track, and it will give you a more or less average of your LUFS reading, which is good because then if you find out that, hey, the average is -15 or -16, then you can kind of give yourself a little bump there in headroom to kind of hit the ceiling of -14. So the first plugin in my mastering chain is a Fab Filter EQ, and I'm using this just to take out some of the low end rumble. And I made sure to have this set to 6 dB range so that the adjustments that I make aren't drastic. Remember, we're not trying to wash the car with wax. We're just giving it a little bit of shine. So a lot of the adjustments are very minor. So I just took this range out a little bit. And then next I head over to another EQ. And if you're asking, why don't you just use one EQ? Well, they're for multiple purposes. So for instance, after the Fab filter, I'm sweeping away the low end stereo wise, and then I'm using the Ozone EQ plugin here, and I've set it from stereo to mid and side. This is going to give us the ability to EQ the side information that we hear and the mid as well. So, and I like using this Ozone EQ because I can solo the side and just particularly listen to what is happening on the side, just the information there. So let's do that. Let's solo this. And we can hear just what's happening in the side. So let me just take it from the first chorus. So as I make these adjustments, I basically find frequencies that are just a little annoying, or something that I just hear, something that could just be. I'm musically making these decisions, by the way. So this is adding, for instance, I'll go to the second half of the chorus where the electric guitars come in. I want a little bit of less of that. It just wasn't giving me the right feel to it. So went to there and I just dialed that back a little bit and got rid of some low end and just repeated the same process for some low mid there. And so I'll unsolo that so we can hear it now back to normal. And then I go to the mid, I can solo the mid and just hear and focus on what the mid is doing. cancel that, and now let's hear. So let's hear, just by adding those two EQs alone, let's go back and forth with my mix version and the mastered. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's listen to the mix. Really subtle, and that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm going for that, but it does add a little bit of clarity to that. Now, after EQing the mids and sides with the ozone equalizer, I then use another EQ, and this is the Master EQ 432 from T-Rex, and it's great. It's very cool. It's got a great tone to it, and so this primarily I'm using to boost or to bring to life certain frequencies. You know, if I want a little bit more bottom end, some high mid frequencies there. So that's what I'm using. Now, a great tool to kind of navigate more or less of like, how do you know if you're having too many highs or if you have too much low end? Isotope has made a great plugin called the Tonal Balance Control, and this is basically giving you a readout if your tone is in balance. Do you have too much low end? Do you have too much of a certain frequency peaking out? And so what they've done is they've kind of put together a bunch of tracks, and they've kind of given an overall average of what some modern tracks that you would normally hear on radio, or some common top 40 stuff like that, bass heavy tracks, so you can see the spectrum changes a little bit. So I'm going to use the modern curve here just to kind of help me navigate whether more or less I can visualize where I'm at. It's nothing too crazy. I don't have like really big spikes coming out of so it's a pretty good shape. It's in a pretty good place. And so I'm just using this EQ to just give a little bit more of some high frequency boost, just to add some more shine to the mix. After that, I'm also using another EQ. He's like, dang, homeboy is EQ hungry. Well, they all have their own characteristics. They all have their own unique strengths, and it's all just minor. I'm not doing a lot of crazy boosting. Again, the T-Rex one is also set to 6 decibel range. So it looks like I'm cranking a lot, but it really isn't a lot of changes happening, just small minor details. And I'm using the pole take EQ here from Universal Audio just to give a little bit more of 5K, I had 4 to 5K shine, and this is helping the vocal stand out a little bit more. This is gonna add some more clarity. So let me take it over to the first verse here.
Walk inside my lungs, burning in the heat, a haunted reverie.
And I've set this all the way down to 20. I know it sounds weird, like why didn't you just cut 20 from that first EQ? Why are you boosting it? Again, this is one of the characteristics of this specific EQ. It's not necessarily you're going to 20, but it just gives a nice all-around boost on the bottom end there. And I dialed to 30, 60, and felt like the 20 just gave the nice little bottom end boost to the kick drum.
Walk inside my lungs, burning in the heat, a haunted.
It's like a healthy bottom, not like the thumpy bottom, which you would hear if I went to like 60.
Walk inside my lungs, burning in.
So see the big difference there. So just gave a little bit of bump there. So with the EQs in place, let me just do a quick A/B and see where we're at so far.
Trapped inside a dream.
So nice clarity there. So you can see how all the combination of the EQs are really adding up to give a little bit more tonal definition. Next, I have a little bit of compression, and I had some compression already on my master bus when I was mixing this. So this is more purposely to just control the overall gain. I used the master bus compressor on my mix to kind of glue things together. I'm using this to kind of control the dynamic range from, like, let's say the pre-chorus over to the chorus. So when we transition from one section, instead of trying to, like, you know, have the level of the verses match the choruses, I'm gonna have the choruses just dialed down a little bit so it's all more cohesive.
The weight of everything.
So that's the purpose, and I'm using the FabFilter Pro C1. And that's really what that's doing. I'm not doing a lot of compression. As you can see, we really just took away about -1 dB, and then I'm just boosting up to maybe 1.5. Scale this back down. So that's kind of like where we're at so far. And then once I've gotten the compressor in place, I went ahead and start using another Ozone 8 mastering plugin. And this is similar to a Deesser. I'm focusing on one frequency band, and I'm just kind of tucking that down. So most dominant here in this bridge section. So let me.
Lost in the door, calling your name.
So just kind of de-essing that, giving a little bit of some, just tucking that frequency back here. So if I go right into this. And that's helping just control any of those spikes at that frequency. So now at this moment, I'm going to enable my limiter. And this is just to prevent any of the peaking going on from all the additions that we've just currently made to our new mastered track. So enable my Ozone 8 maximizer. And as you can even see here, you can enable, the target is going to be -14.0 LUFS, which is that ceiling that we mentioned that Spotify and other streaming platforms have. So I don't have to crush or compromise my dynamics just to make things sound loud. I know that they're going to raise it or bring things back down so that it all meets that ceiling. And all the songs on the streaming platforms have that average, right? You can set this on so that this limiter will detect where the threshold needs to be to hit that target. So let's take it from.
Everything.
So as you can see, even using the metering, bringing that back up again, it went, we're at -11 here. And you saw that the threshold was just going higher and higher, higher up as the song got louder and louder. Because what it's saying is, whoa, this part of the song is getting louder. We don't need to, if we're trying to hit our target volume threshold, -14, we don't need to be squashing this anymore. We're close to it. So I'm going to take this learn threshold off. I'll leave the ceiling at 0.5, or let's just leave it at 3. And then, and I'll just bring this down. Now, once again, the reason why I like using this meter is that I can get an overall average reading of the whole song if I played it from top to bottom. And this is important. If the song that you're doing is majorly loud, where there's lots of big choruses and things like that, and that's the bulk of the song, well then, that is the average of what you need to gauge it by. But if it's very dynamic, where you have soft verses and then it builds and then you get this chorusy and then back to soft, and if that is going on, then you're introducing a lot more dynamics to the overall mix. So if you want to keep that musical journey, then you have to consider where you're going to be placing this threshold. If you just want everything to be like right? Well, there you go. Then you just bring everything down and squash it. So this meter, the MAAT, gives me a reading overall average. And I've done that already, and it's somewhere around -15. So I can kind of use that as a way to just give myself maybe like, I can kind of squeeze about maybe -2 dB of limiting. So now let's go ahead and take a listen and compare it to the mix, now to the mastered file. So let's take a listen.
Bring me back to life. Walking through the fire, running from the ember, but I keep breaking under the weight of everything.
So I'm loving what I'm hearing, and I'm ready to go ahead and export this and share this and release this out into the world. So, and that's really what it comes down to, and is it bringing and getting to the feeling that you like, and capturing that the musical vibe that you're looking for in the mastering process. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you and encouraging in some way. So as my gift to you for watching, I would love to send you a sample pack loaded with construction kits, loops, one-shots, transition effects. They're 100% royalty free. That means that you can use them in your projects right away and share your music with the rest of the world. It works on any DAW. You simply download the sample pack and click drag and add it into your DAW. And so this is yours absolutely free. All you have to do is simply click the link below in the description box to download this sample pack today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.